Good morning and welcome to the third series in our webinar series on Microsoft Fabric. Today we'll be looking specifically at data science in Microsoft Fabric. My name is 𝗪𝗪𝗶𝗲𝗶. I'm the Chief Operations Officer at TrueNorth Group, and my colleague 𝗬𝗪𝗶𝗲𝗶 will be handling the presentation side of the demo, as well as a live demo of the data science capabilities within Microsoft Fabric. 𝗬𝗪𝗶𝗲𝗶 is well versed in this subject. He's our MD, so looking forward to that. So just a little bit about TrueNorth Group. We're a data and AI consultancy. We are mainly focused in the Microsoft space. We're a Microsoft solutions partner in both data and AI, as well as in the software development arena. We were established in 2015, so we've delivered quite a number of projects for our clients in terms of helping them get more value from their data, as well as being more data driven. Yeah, so just to have a look at in terms of our physical locations, we operate from 3 continents. We've got our main office in Centurion in Pretoria, with another office down in Century City in Cape Town. And we are very excited to be opening our first office in Charlotte, North Carolina. 𝗬𝗪𝗶𝗶𝗶 will actually be opening up that office for us, and that should be fully operational by the end of August. Yes, great stuff. So at this point, I'm going to be handing over to 𝗬𝗪𝗶𝗶𝗶, and 𝗬𝗪𝗶𝗶𝗶's going to be taking us through a little bit more detail in terms of our engagement model and so on. Thanks, 𝗬𝗪𝗶𝗶𝗶.
Thank you, Archie. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time and welcome to the webinar today. Some of you have maybe seen some of the other webinars in the series, the ones on data warehousing or data engineering, and also the data analysis piece focusing on Power BI. Today we're going to focus on the data science side of things. But just before I get into that, just to give you an overview of what we do. So like Archie was saying, we're a Microsoft solution partner. We focus on the data and AI competencies, and also the digital and app and innovation competencies. So just briefly about TrueNorth. If you look at our services, you can basically classify them in those 3 categories at the top: advisory services, professional services, and then we also have some solutions. So just to quickly give an overview of that. So from an advisory point of view, it's mainly strategic advisory services, where we go into a client and we help them with, as you can see on the bottom left there, data estate modernization. We also help a lot of clients with setting and formulating and implementing their AI strategies. AI is the buzzword at the moment, and a lot of companies are looking towards AI and seeing what it can do for their business. However, it requires you to set a strategy and obviously implement that strategy successfully to get the value from it. We also help clients with, for example, setting up a center of excellence. You want to set up a data and AI center of excellence, and what that entails. We help the office of the CXO, so your CFOs, your CIOs, for example, and helping them with understanding the benefits of data and AI in their business. And then from a more software engineering, point of view, digital transformation strategies. So moving across and digitizing a lot of your operations. In the middle there, the professional services, that's where the bulk of the work happens, and that's where we do our scoping and sizing of projects and executing of them. And there's 4 main categories of those. So modern data platforms, a lot of what we're talking about today from a Fabric point of view is implementing a modern data platform. Modern data platform allowing you to combine disparate data sources, allowing you to do the warehousing component of it, the visualization from a Power BI point of view, but then also setting you up for the machine learning and AI capabilities as well. So modern data platforms, modern data warehouse implementations, data warehouse migrations. So if a company wants to migrate from on-prem into the cloud, we do those sort of services, and then obviously setting up the BI reporting infrastructure and also the reports for the clients. Artificial intelligence solutions, general AI and machine learning solutions, various types of use cases where we build bespoke AI and machine learning solutions for clients. And then lately, the generative AI movement. There's quite a lot of capabilities available these days using the large language models available, for example, on Azure AI Studio, which is where we're going to focus, building AI bots and virtual agents for clients. And then we also have the capability to do data science as a service. So generally team augmentation kind of scenario where you've got some internal resources, but you need some additional capabilities and capacity. You can help with that as well. Software development, as I mentioned, we're today focusing on more the data platform side of things, but we also have a software development capability. And there we look at custom software development, team augmentation again, CI/CD, DevOps type of implementations as well. And then from a specialist recruiting side of things, Archie sitting here as well runs with that business unit, where we help clients in recruiting data and software resources. We can do specialist recruitment if you've got like a particular resource that you require, or we can do contracting of resources or RPO processes. I'm not sure if you wanted to add.
No, that's great, Tenny. I mean, on the RPO side, there's a lot of your sort of smaller businesses that don't have the capability to have internal recruitment. So that's where we can help them to do a recruitment process outsourcing.
Yep, absolutely. And then from a solution side, I think the solutions you need to look at, yes, is basically fast starts to get you going on a particular workload. So ProSim is our profit optimization ecosystem that allows a retailer or FMCG company to quickly set AI-driven pricing, promotion, and inventory selection strategies. Our customer portal is a fast start to get you a system of engagement with your clients to enable you to communicate and interact with clients, internal employees, or vendors/suppliers as well. And then our accelerated analytics offering is basically a fast start unified data model that allows you to get finance, sales, and the general operational and sales reports that you need much quicker. So that's a little bit about what we do. Industry-wide, we focus heavily in the data and AI side of things, very deep end-to-end, but we do it across industries. And as you can see, there are various industries that we've done work in this space: banking, finance, the financial services industry, aviation, healthcare, retail, logistics, quite a few on this list. And then just a quick overview of some of the partners, some of the customers that we work with and are working with. As you can see again, quite a broad range. So that's enough about what we do. So in terms of data and data platform challenges, Microsoft Fabric is obviously a unified data platform. But if we just look at the challenges that we typically face in this sort of scenario, it's what you see on the screen, and there's many more. These are just 8 that I've picked that normally presents themselves, but there's way more, and I'm sure if I asked everyone on the line to give their challenges, they might add a few here as well. But just quickly go through them. You've got disparate sources. That's normally the scenario with any of the clients we work with. Various ERPs, SAPs, Oracles, Sages, bespoke custom-built ERPs, etc. Data sitting in all of these disparate sources. Data quality, always a concern. We all know the phrase garbage in, garbage out. Making sure that your data is of quality so that you can use it within your data science environment is quite paramount. It ensures that whatever you output from your models are actually useful. Collaboration between data developers, this is something I've seen in my time working in this sort of environments. You might have some resources that prefer SQL, and they've got a SQL environment where they work. Others prefer Python, some prefer R. There's even people who code in Spark Scala as an example. And then, traditionally, there's traditional data manipulation tool sets as well. Collaboration between these developers are often not easy because you've got these disparate systems. Everyone logs into their own system. That's one of the challenges with getting these resources to work together efficiently. A lot of companies are sitting with a multi-cloud strategy, so they're not just focusing on one cloud. They've got various clouds or various data sources sitting in various clouds, or maybe duplicated across clouds. And how do you deal with that successfully? Closed source tools versus open source tools. a lot of the traditional analytics softwares are closed source or not open source, meaning that you cannot really see what goes on under the hood. I think the industry, if we look at the movement and what's happening today, is a lot more moving to open source tool sets and open source technologies, helping you to collaborate a lot better. Data and AI governance. Data governance on its own is a challenge, and then AI governance and all the regulations that are being considered and being passed at the moment, and how do you cater for that? Scalability. I think the traditional problem, there's a lot more data, and data is exploding. There's more and more coming into our environments, and you want that ability to quickly scale up your resources, your compute resource, or storage resource for that matter, in order to help you to cater for that. And then cost management. How do you successfully manage the cost? I think everyone has got cost pressures in the current economy. How do you manage that successfully? How do you manage that efficiently? It becomes a challenge. So Microsoft Fabric, just to introduce that, the top there, as you can see, it's an end-to-end analytics platform. It gives you a complete analytics platform with the best of breed tools. It's a unified SaaS solution. You've got the environment for low-code and pro-code or pro developers. It's end-to-end in the sense that you've got your data warehousing, data engineering, data analysis, and data science capabilities all in one. It's a lake-centric architecture, and we'll get into the one lake and what the benefits is of that. It's familiar and intuitive. So if you've ever worked in Power BI, you'll see that the interface, for example, looks like Power BI. In fact, when you go into Fabric, you go to app.powerbI.com to open it up, to get into it. So it's very familiar if you've worked in that sort of environment before. And then obviously from a security and governance point of view, end-to-end visibility, secure by default, and very governed from a purview point of view as well. So Fabric, unified data analytics platform. And as you can see here, and given the experience I've had in the past, I've never had an environment where I've had all these capabilities in one environment. So you've got your integration, your engineering and warehousing capabilities on the left. You can do your data science. It's all linked to the warehouse that you built. You can do the real-time analytics piece. And by the way, we've got a webinar coming up on Thursday on the real-time analytics. I think Luke is on the line. So Luke, no pressure, but looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be quite exciting. Donald has taken us through the Power BI side of things for how you do your visualization, your reports. And then Data Activator. Again, quite exciting because I think it's just out of preview, if I'm not mistaken, and that's where you can, in real time, act on any of these real-time streams and analytics. And underlying all of that's the One Lake. The One Lake will show the capabilities and the benefits of the One Lake. But all your data, one copy, sits in that One Lake. And as mentioned, your warehousing, your engineering piece, science piece, and also the real-time analytics and reporting on top of that one environment. So if we focus and zoom in a little bit on the data science side of things on Fabric, so we're going to run through these 4 elements, and then we are going to get into the demo part of this session. So just on the Fabric Unified Analytics Platform. Like I mentioned, this particular webinar is focused on that data science side of things. So if you look at the traditional data science process or data science workflow, right, this is it, right? Problem identification, there's a ideation phase that you work through with business. You get to understand their requirements, and you formulate the problem and formulate the best solution from that. After that, you need to do data discovery and pre-processing. This is where the actual exploratory data analysis, if that's the term that you're also familiar with, that's where you normally start with the exploratory data analysis side of things. The key, again, like we said, unified platform. There's no more of copying data from a different environment where it might have been put into a warehouse and dragging that across into a different environment for you to now start doing your Python or R or whatever your preferred language is, coding language is. Everything is in the same environment. It's all in the One Lake, one copy, and we can all use the same data source, which helps obviously because then we know there's no differences. We're all working off the same source of truth. Obviously, the next phase would be that experimentation and modeling piece. And as you can see there at the bottom, it's an iterative process. So we prepare, we model, we evaluate, we explore, and we continue again around that cycle. And the key thing is, obviously, if you want to build a proper machine learning or MLOps, AIOps environment, you want to enable experimentation. There's a saying that says, if you double experimentation, you double innovation. So the more you can experiment, the more you can find out and get learnings and get new models in place. What's also key, though, is in that experiment and modeling environment is to get those models into production as quickly as possible and get those into insights as quickly as possible. Again, if you go back, we can immediately put that into visualization, but we can also expose these things in real time in APIs, for example, for these models to be called and used in production systems. And that's where the enrich and operationalize piece also comes in. And then finally, the insight side of things is obviously once we've operationalized the results of our models, we can look at the insights, see if we are getting more customers to join us or getting less customers to churn, for example, which is the example we're going to walk through today. So it's a lake-centric open architecture approach, and that's quite key. I think if you've worked with something like Azure Synapse before, one key element, for example, was one good element for customers was the serverless compute. So dedicated pools with serverless compute. It was a lot cheaper to use the serverless compute in most instances, gave you quick enough results, and was very useful. So if you look at the top here on the left, we've got our integration, engineering, warehousing, analytics, science, and BI environments. But underneath, like I mentioned, that one lake, that technology that underlies or underpins that, one component is the serverless compute. So again, you have your serverless compute, you quickly spin that up, very cost efficient, and it allows you to quickly get results. One security, so all your security is managed within that one lake. Because it's one copy, it's less of a burden to manage the security aspects of it. And then the Delta Parquet format. So like we said in the slide before, it's an open format. So Parquet is obviously an open file format, and at the moment, probably one of the industry standards in terms of storing files. And the reason for that is obviously because it's very compressed. It's a lot more compressed than, for example, a CSV file, making the size of the storage a lot smaller. And then you've got the added benefit naturally of Delta. So Delta Parquet on top of that, which is we only process the changes, which makes the processing a lot faster. So quite a lot of benefits in terms of the one lake technology that underpins the entire Microsoft Fabric capabilities or experiences. As Microsoft refers to the data integration, engineering, warehousing, etc., as experiences, all of those experiences being underpinned by the one lake capabilities. This is for me quite a good slide. These are basically, by the way, Microsoft pictures and content from a Microsoft Fabric point of view. And what you can see on the left here, like I mentioned earlier, if you've got multi-cloud, there's a lot of shortcuts and capabilities within that one lake storage that you can use, where you can integrate if your data is sitting in Azure or it's sitting in AWS, Google Cloud, or other cloud providers. It's quite easy to bring all that data together in the one lake storage. The one lake essentially therefore abstracts the fact that you've got storage accounts across different clouds, and you can use this multi-cloud capability on top of those storage accounts and just process the data within one lake. Your data scientist, data engineer, data analyst can just continue with their work. The data will flow into that one lake, one copy again, like we said, and you can leverage that capability. And then notebooks, I think just to quickly touch on that, I'm quite a fan of notebooks. Big reason for in the data science world, especially and data engineering as well, is the fact that you can combine code blocks with markdown cells the markdown cells are great for documenting and for creating commentary and for creating graphs that you can reference. And this again helps that collaboration side of things, like we mentioned. If I were to give this over to Archie and say, Archie, here's the notebook. Please make these changes. There's a lot of content on what was the thought process and what I was trying to do here. The code is obviously in the code cells, and we can add the documentation layer included with the code pieces as well. Then from a machine learning side of things, obviously because it's in Azure and in cloud environments, on the distributed cluster environments, you've got distributed machine learning capabilities. MLflow, for those of you who are familiar with MLflow, one of the I would say better tools to use or better technologies to use for your machine learning ops environments and machine learning ops capabilities. But then also on the right-hand side, more of the latest Azure AI services, things like cognitive services, and also the Azure OpenAI large language models. If you are familiar with Azure OpenAI Studio or Azure AI Studio, those large language models, the latest from OpenAI in terms of GPTs, but also nowadays the latest from the Facebook guys, Mistral guys, Llamas, and Hugging Face, etc. models are available. And using the software development kits, you can then access those within the Microsoft Fabric environment via the notebooks. And with that, let's jump over to Fabric.
While you're doing that, something that I didn't mention was that, first of all, if there's any questions, you are welcome to post them into the chat on this meeting. We'll be fielding those questions. And then secondly, all of our webinars will be hosted onto our YouTube channel. I've already posted the link of that in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So again, like I mentioned, if you now go into your web browser and you go to app.powerbi.com, like I mentioned, if you've worked with Power BI service before, you'll be familiar with app.powerbi.com. If not, like you can see here, it looks like the app. It looks like the Power BI service. Essentially, you just go to the app.powerbi.com, and if I scroll down, if I move my cursor down here to the bottom left, this is where the big change was. And with Power BI before Fabric, the only thing that you would have seen there at the bottom left would have been Power BI. But now, if you click down there, you can see all these other experiences opening up from a Fabric side of things. And what I've done is I'm currently in the data science environment. Obviously, like we mentioned, we are working through the data science piece today. So this is what you will see if you open up the data science experience. And at the top here is the key information. So you can start with a machine learning model. You can look at some of the experiments you run, notebooks, create a new notebook or environment, or for example, import a notebook. What I do like about all the Azure experiences or all the Azure cloud services, there's normally a few samples, few templates that you can use to get you going a lot quicker. So do check that out. I think just some fast starts just to get you going as quickly as possible. The first thing we're going to do today is I am currently in my workspace. But the first thing I want to show is if you go to the import notebook side of things, you can see this blade popping up on the right-hand side, and you'll see this upload button. Now, if you do have notebooks, Python notebooks as an example, stored on your local machine, you can upload those via the upload function. Import them into your workspace. Now, if I click on upload as an example, I've already imported these, but yes, some sample notebooks that I've used. These sample notebooks, by the way, is available on Microsoft's Learn documentation. So I've just ingested some of these notebooks, and we're going to walk through those today. But you would just click on those and open them up. And what would happen is they go sit. If I can just get my... This is the problem with a live demo, right?
Always a live demo, Eni.
Something is bound.
There's always a gremlin somewhere.
Refresh this page.
Go for it.
So let's see. There we go.
We're showing the audience that this is not not a staged.
It's not a real people. That's it. The real 𝗪𝗶𝗶. So you're going to get into this workspace and you'll probably see something along these lines. Now, another great thing that they've added more recently, thank you Microsoft for adding that, because I think that was missing in the original Fabric implementation, is the one, it's not very technical, but trust me, it does save you a lot of gray hairs, is the folder. So the folder structure. So you can create folders within Fabric. So otherwise, this list, as you can just see here,
list of, yeah. So it's similar to a Windows Explorer structure.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you're just going to see a bunch of notebooks and a bunch of data lakes, etc., that's running down the side. Yeah. This is also where you can manage if there's multiple users having access to the workspace.
So you can longer create folders.
Yeah. You can create the folder structure for each of them. They can use the environment. Now, I've created the Fabric demo or Fabric webinar demo folder, and as you can see, I moved those notebooks that I imported into the Fabric webinar demo folder. So now I know where it is, and I can find it quite easily. And I have already opened it up, but let me do that again. So you can now open up one of these notebooks. And like I mentioned, these are available on the Learn documentation. So we can probably share that link at the end of this. It's a Git repository. In fact, for Fabric, it's got quite a few data engineering, data analysis sample sets as well. So you might want to check that out after this. So the first thing you'll see here is that I've got a lakehouse attached. So in order for you to work with a notebook, you first of all need to attach a lakehouse. That's quite key. And as you can see, I've already imported the files, but I first need to attach the lakehouse. Now, if I don't have the lakehouse created, it's quite easy. I need to go to data engineering experience. And what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to go and say create a lakehouse. Now, I created that lakehouse already, so let's just create. Goes. Not sure how long it's going to take, but just as an example, it should run that. So now it's creating a lakehouse in the backend for me. And what you'll see is just a blank lakehouse. There's nothing in there at this stage. There's no files. There's no tables. It's completely blank. When I get back to my data science experience and I go to my notebook that I opened up, notebook we just saw, what you can see on the left is I've joined the lakehouse, but if there was no lakehouse attached, I first need to go to the data source, add data sources, and add a lakehouse. It says, do I want to add a new one or do I want to add an existing one? If I say existing one, there you can see the test lakehouse that we just created. Now, I've already attached the data science lake over here, which is the one I've created before this session. But similarly, I would just click on this one and add it to my notebook. And then I've got the capability to add tables and add files, import files, and obviously create tables within my notebooks, and I can reference those going forward. So I'm just going to kick this off. And I do want you guys to just have a look here. So it is not connected at this stage. Again, holding thumbs now. This is live demo stuff again. But as you can see there at the bottom left, the session has started. And what is quite cool there, you can see it's already running the cells. So it did start quite quickly. If you've ever worked in Synapse and kicking off Spark pools and getting those Spark pools up and running can take a while. It does seem like it runs quite quickly when you run it in Microsoft Fabric. I'm not going to go through the notebooks in detail, but essentially what this notebook just does is just create some variables, and then I'm loading from an open source or publicly available repository. I'm just loading this bank customer churn data set. Now you can go and have a look at what that is, but once you run this, you will see that churn raw file sitting on the churn, and that's just a CSV file with some bank churn data that you can then now use and play around with. So once you've done that, you've got your data loaded. You can jump to the next notebook here. So typically in the data science workflow process, like we mentioned, that first step after you've defined your business problem and worked with the folks in the business, you now know what their problem is and what you're trying to solve. The first step is naturally to explore the data and just to have a look at it. Again, I'm just going to kickstart these real quickly. You want to quickly touch on something called Data Wrangler. So I think Data Wrangler is quite a useful piece of technology or useful tool functionality within Fabric. Normally, there's obviously different steps taken from an exploratory data analysis, different distributions you want to draw. But some of the standard steps, things like missing values and seeing how many missing values there are, removing those. Some things like taking a text field and making everything lowercase or making uppercase, removing spaces, etc. Those are normal standard tasks. If you've ever worked in data science and you've ever worked in building these models, you'll know that they can trip you up as soon as you get to a certain point. The spaces, the missing values, etc., can kind of trip you up. So what we've done here is we've now just imported that data frame, the bank churn data, and it's sitting over here. What I want to show you guys is if you go up here, so I've called the data frame div that I've ingested this data into. If I go up here to Data Wrangler, and it's going to show me all the possible pandas data frames that I have. At this stage, I only have the one. But if I click on this, it's going to open up a new window for you. And what you can see in the middle part of this over here is just some basic stats, some basic data. So obviously we can see that there's a customer ID field. You can see how many distinct surnames there are. It's even drawn me a little bit of a distribution on the credit score, so I can see what that looks like. Just some basic stats, just to get you going, kind of see what the age distribution is. Does it look like more younger or more older clients? I can see the distribution between different countries over here, France, Germany, Spain. Now, again, I didn't do anything. This was just pulled in straight from Fabric. Just give you some exploratory data real quickly. But what I want to focus on is just here on the left-hand side. So you've got find and replace, format, formulas, numeric schema, sort and filter. If we just look at, for example, find and replace. So let's say we want to pull missing values. That's normally a standard technique or standard step that you need to do in order to get your missing values, either remove them or replace them with mean substitution, median substitution, whatever flavor you want to look at. So if we go here, we say full missing values, and let's say create a score, for example, and we can pick any other variable as well. And I can, for example, say, replace it with a custom value of 0. I say apply. Now, what has happened is, so I'll jump back to that. If you look here at the bottom in the middle, it's generated a code snippet form. So it's generated a little bit of code snippet that if I know I'm going to repeat this step, if I know I'm always going to have to remove this credit score, I've got the code snippet going. I don't have to code that up. I just use the Data Wrangler drag and drop functionality, and I can generate some code snippets to remove, for example, or full missings with zeros in the credit score. Now, obviously, I can add more columns here. I can also go back and do more. I can do format changes. I can do formulas. I can play around with the schema. I can do sorts and filters, etc. But what's nice is it always creates this little code snippet, as you saw here at the bottom. And what's also nice is if I'm happy with this, I can copy this, or I can just add it to my notebook. Now, as you can see here, I have to notebook. I don't want to add this now to the notebook, but I want to show you within my notebook. Over here is a good example of what we did with the data wrangler. And what I've done here is I've created a little function, clean data, and that function drops the non-availables, drops the nulls, drops duplicates, and removes a few columns that I'm not going to use. Columns like surname, we're all aware, given that we work in this sort of space, data privacy, personal identifiable information. We want to remove those sort of fields from the beginning if you can. And I've got this little function. And what I can now do is I can just run that function against my data frame. So I can create a clean data frame from a data frame VF, and it'll obviously apply all those techniques for me.
So just a question there, Eni, does that get applied to your actual data source?
No.
So just the data frame.
Just to the data frame.
Okay.
So just apply to the data frame. If you want to apply that sort of techniques or that sort of rules to your data source, you're also going to do that with data engineering,
Yes,
and data warehousing, which is probably what you want to do. Get rid of things that you're not going to need.
yeah.
So I'm just running real quick through all of these cells, just to make sure that my data frames are updated in my tables. And just to show that capability, or to show what happens, if you look at this over here, you'll see there that once I've now run my clean data frame, I now want to write that out, and I want to be able to reference that. So I'm done for today, and I've created the table that I wanted to. I've done all the exploratory analysis that I needed to. Now, excuse me, I want to save that table for future reference. So what you can do is you can write that out, and as you can see here, it's going to save it to the tables structure over here. And I've already run it now. But there's the DF clean that I've just written out, and it's now in Spark in a 𝗪𝗲𝗶 file format. I can reference it when I get going again. Next one, to quickly show over here. Once we've now done our exploratory data analysis, now we want to continue. We want to build a model. We want to train and register a machine learning model. I'm just going to kick off all of this in one go. And what I want to show here real quick from a data science capability in Microsoft Fabric, obviously we're leveraging MLflow, as you can see on the screen over here, but it does log for me all the experiments. I'm just going to screenshot down. Yeah, we'll come back to the actual cells. Once the models is run, we've created all these different experiments. We're going to get something looking like this, where we can go back and we can go see the experiments that were run, when were they run, who did it, what's the source data, but also the key metrics. So what was the accuracy metrics as an example? Why is this important? If you've ever worked in this sort of environment, you'll know that you're constantly experimenting, and sometimes you forget what is it you've tried. I tried to add this feature, or I tried to remove a different feature. I'm trying to get back to understanding what was the accuracy of that experiment, what happened, did it improve, did it deteriorate the accuracy? What I played around with parameters, or model hyperparameters, for example, learning rates. And now I want to see, okay, so what did I change the learning rate to? So okay, I went from 0.1 to 0.09. And what was the impact on accuracy? What was the impact on runtimes, as an example? So what is quite nice is within Fabric, using MLflow, you can quickly run through these models, and it'll produce an environment for you where you can go and track these experiments. Now let's see these experiments. Now, as you can see, I've run through quite a few experiments here. I've done a random forest right here called RFC1 SM, and I've also done an RFC2 SM. And what I can now do is, this one is now done, I can just click on this, and it'll open up that experimentation view for me, so I can see what the results were. So you can see I've now run these things quite a few times in preparation, but over here is those hyperparameters and all the details around the model, and all the details around what I've got. and quite useful for you to go back, like I said, save it and also go back and see what I've tried and what I've experimented with and what the results were. Did it actually improve the accuracy or not?
Yeah.
And once we're done, we're also saving these models for future reference. So the last notebook from a machine learning side of things, just to quickly show you, is so now we've built our models, we've trained it, and we've saved the best model, and we're happy with what we have. And now we want, on a regular basis, I don't know, we want to do a batch inference once a day, once a week, once a month. We want to load those models and use them. So we've created a little process to create our data sets on a daily basis, for example, and we're going to now use MLflow again. Like I mentioned, MLflow, great for doing your ML ops. We're going to load our model. So as you can see here, we decided on the 𝗪𝗲𝗯𝗶_SM model. That's our model that's probably the champion at this stage. We can run champion challenger strategies, obviously, to see which one is the best. But at the moment, that's our champion model, and we call that model and we apply it to our data. And what's going to happen is it's going to produce some results for us, some prediction results for us that we can then further use down the line. Just to run through real quick. So this sort of phase with the previous notebook that we walked through is really that capability which I showed in the beginning, the experimentation, that iterative process. So you've set up your environment, your data engineering is working, your data warehousing processes, ETL pipelines run, your data gets updated on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever basis, or real time for that matter, and you've got an environment where you can experiment. I can create these experiments, I can track these experiments, which is critical for you to understand what you've tried and what the results were. And I can implement those and inference in batches or in real time. Now, once I've done this, I've saved my table, the output of this, the churn predictions. I've now saved it as a table in my lakehouse. Just to quickly show that. This is the last piece that I do want to show real quick, and that's this customer churn test. So I've output my data, and it looks something along this lines. Here's just an example, and my predictions are in here. Now, just to quickly touch on this, maybe if we can, if we were to go to Power BI, let's see this, and I go to my lake. If you wanted to visualize, so let's say I built my model, it's inferencing, it's running on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, whatever the case might be. But I also want to show the executives, what the results were and is it actually doing something. What you can do, because like we mentioned, it is a unified data analytics environment, I can quickly go and build a dashboard. I can quickly build some visualizations. Quickly build a Power BI dashboard on top of my results and serve that as a Power BI report. So if you were to go like I just did here, I went back to Power BI, I opened up the lakehouse that I've connected, the data science lake, as you can see at the top, and I've opened up that table, and here's a sample of the data that I just produced. And simply, if you're familiar with Power BI, you can say test, create a new semantic. Yeah. And I'm saying, okay, I just want to focus on this one particular table, which is the customer churn test predictions. I'm in my workspace, I click confirm. Now, a few more minutes, so that's at least good. This is going to take a few minutes, but what it's doing now, it's pulling this into a data model form. Now, if I had dimension tables as well that I want to join onto this, I could gladly do that as well. But the nice thing is, if you are familiar with Power BI as a data scientist and you want to just visualize some of the things, like you can see here, now I've got my table into the data model within Power BI. And from here, if I had dimension tables that I wanted to link up, if I had dimension tables that I also wanted to link up, I can actually link those up as well. Let's close this message for now. And I can create new measures, right? So I can go in, so I'm looking at, let's say, measure created for, if you've ever used DAX, I'm not the expert in DAX by no means. That is Donald and the guys' world, but I can help myself with some of the measures. Let's say I wanted to create a measure, for example, in this case, the average of the prediction. So I can do that, and it's going to add that measure to my data model over here. And then if I want to, now I'm happy with my measures, just go to new report. Let's open up a new Power BI window for me, and this is where I can actually build the actual dashboards. So once it's gone into this, I can see Power BI, if you're familiar with Power BI, and right, this is where I can say table. I've got all my measures right here, and I'm just create it as an example. And it's not nicest looking report, but you can continue from this, obviously. Yeah. Making it nice, that's the exercise on its own. So that is it from a demo point of view for Fabric, from a data science side of things. I'm going to jump back to this. And maybe, yeah, I think I'm going to hand it over now to Archie again. He's going to close it out for us, and maybe we can look at some questions.
Wow, thanks, Eni. That was quite interesting. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, if there's any questions that you guys might have, you are welcome to pose it into the chat now. While we've got Eni live here, he can answer some of those questions. Also, be sure to follow our LinkedIn and our YouTube pages, where we will be posting these webinars. There's still one on Thursday, as Eni mentioned, around the real-time analytics, and that will be the final one in terms of our Fabric webinars. Yeah, so thanks very much, Eni. That was excellent.
It's a pleasure.